Thank you, Senator Moima. Senator Orwoba Magoma.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to make my contributions on this report that has been tabled by the Committee of Energy. First of all, I want to congratulate the members of this committee because, Mr. Speaker, I took my time to go through this report, and I can tell you that they did a thorough job. Mr. Speaker, the biggest scam, the biggest fraud, the biggest con game in all of every other industry in this world is IPPs. Independent power producers. It's a scam, Mr. Speaker. Because if you look at how we are engaging them, we have literally instituted corruption. Because what we are saying is that we don't have the capacity as Kenya Power to produce and to distribute, yet we do. But we are putting an in-between person to trade on behalf of government. Mr. Speaker, when the Kenya Kwanza government came in and said we wanted to have a committee, a commission of inquiry on state capture. And there were people saying, what is state capture? You can't just be calling out names of state capture. IPPs is a clear example of state capture. Because this is an intentional system that has been created to facilitate deliberate efforts to just weaken an institution, Mr. Speaker. I heard yesterday my colleague saying that we have to have transparency in terms of who are the owners of these IPPs. Absolutely. Because the first thing before we talk about how to disorganize or to bring down IPPs is we need to know who has been bringing our country down. That's the first step, so that we can put the faces of these cartels, so that we can say that it is this person who is actually the beneficiary of so many children dying when we have the power cuts, Mr. Speaker. It is important. And I'm glad that this report actually states that the first thing we have to do, we have to unveil. We have to unveil these companies. We have to put faces so that we can be able to say that so and so person is responsible to all the deaths, to all the destruction every single time we have power blackouts. Mr. Speaker, I'm very happy to also see that there's a recommendation there about honoring the cheaper IPPs and basically dealing with those ones, Mr. Speaker. I am not of the opinion that we should have IPPs. I am of the opinion that they should be shut down. And I've heard people saying that we cannot negotiate contracts. We have gone to China, Mr. Speaker. This government has actually gone to China to renegotiate past loans. So who are these people in the name of IPPs who we cannot renegotiate our contracts with? Who are they? Are they God? That we cannot renegotiate what it is we have gotten into? And Mr. Speaker, when you look at how we are approaching it, it is like we are walking on eggshells. That is why I want to congratulate the chair and the committee members, because they have really come out without fear, without favor, and they've documented what they found, and they've given the proper recommendations that have to be implemented, Mr. Speaker. And on that issue of renegotiating with the IPPs, Mr. Speaker, why should we allow to be held hostage? We are an independent state. We are no longer under colonial rule. So for someone to say we cannot renegotiate our contracts, are they trying to say that they are holding us hostage? Mr. Speaker, I have heard my chair of the delegation, Kisii County, worried about Ethiopia and the kind of contracts we have with Ethiopia. Let me shed some light on that, Mr. Speaker. We traveled with the Committee of National Cohesion on different matters to Ethiopia. But while we were there, because I was also interested in this deal of IPPs and what is happening and why our electricity is too expensive, our chair of that committee then, Senator Chute, organized for a sit-down with the CEO of the equivalent of Kenya Power in Ethiopia. Mr. Speaker, only for us to find out that Ethiopia has the capacity to supply more power to Kenya at less than half the price of the cheapest IPP that is currently listed, Mr. Speaker. That means, and we asked him, why are we not taking up that offer? They said, well, the offer is on the table. We are the cheapest. We are cheaper. We are half the price of the cheapest IPP, and we have the capacity, and the offer is on the table, Mr. Speaker. So it was very interesting for me as a legislator to learn that there are so many other offers out here that we could take up and drop these IPPs so that we can bring the cost down for electricity, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there's a funny story that I want to tell. Prior to me being coming to the Senate, I was just a raia. I was a Kenyan hustling out there. Mr. Speaker, ever since I came back to this country, I have lived in that house where I live, the home I live. My average electricity bill was between 5,000 and 8,000 Kenya shillings, Mr. Speaker. The day that I was sworn in, Mr. Speaker, the day that I came here to chambers and I held the Bible up, Mr. Speaker, and I became a senator, my electricity bill shot up to 25,000, Mr. Speaker. These are facts, it is documented. Nothing had changed. My consumption was the same, Mr. Speaker. If anything, by that time, my son has actually gone to boarding, so I was even consuming less. Mr. Speaker, I was in so much shock. When I asked for transparency, and I've heard that we are talking about transparency, Mr. Speaker, I asked for transparency of my billing till today, from the highest office of KPLC, till today, I am meant to receive an audited report of my meter. I requested for a new meter, Mr. Speaker. It took so much drama for them to even come and audit that if my meter is faulty, they should change it. Mr. Speaker, I feel like Kenyans have been held hostage because of this lack because of the monopoly that KPLC has, Mr. Speaker. When we are talking about transparency, it's not only on the billing, because Kenyans are not understanding. Yes, you can say that, you know, the cost of fuel has gone up and it has affected so many things. But, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge from the board of KPLC, my good friend, the chair, Joy Midivo, who's sitting there, I want to urge them, first of all, to conduct a sensitization, because Kenyans want to understand this bill of mine, what exactly am I paying for? You know, whether it is the levies that are there, whether it is some service charge that is there, we need to have some sensitization so that even Kenyans can be able to understand the billing system, Mr. Speaker. It is important. It is also imperative, when we're talking about transparency, that we talk about transparency on all levels on KPLC, including the procurement processes, Mr. Speaker. We also want transparency on the employment opportunities. Because, Mr. Speaker, the employment that is happening in KPLC, if we don't have the transparency, I'm sitting at the National Cohesion Committee, and we are looking at various issues in terms of the employment opportunities. And you will find some of the reasons why we have a lot of corruption, a lot of shoddy deals, is also because we are not transparent on who we are hiring, Mr. Speaker. So, I am so happy that we have had a committee sit down, research, analyze and interrogate the operations, and even bring out to light this issue of independent power producers, Mr. Speaker, because finally there is an attempt to address the cartelism in KPLC. Mr. Speaker, I want to summarize my contributions by saying we are all in one way or another tied to KPLC, Mr. Speaker. Whether it is your office, whether it is your home, whether it is, you know, we are all tied down to KPLC, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that we are not discussing on how to bring healthy competition in this industry, Mr. Speaker, that is the first problem. So we can audit the IPPs, we can audit the operations, but the question remains, do we want to be held hostage? Do we want to stay in this situation where if KPLC wakes up today and they decide they want to play some shoddy business, we will all be stuck to it. No, Mr. Speaker. So this conversation should go further to now develop mechanisms to open up this market, Mr. Speaker. For a very, very long time, we had only one telecom service provider. For a very long time, it took you almost 8 months to get a landline, Mr. Speaker. For a very long time, the people within that space made sure that no one else would be a player in that industry, Mr. Speaker. And finally, when we cracked that whip, and when we understood that as a country we have to move forward, Mr. Speaker, look at the kind of competition that we have now in that space. We have Safaricom, we have Telcom, we have all sorts of providers in terms of internet, Mr. Speaker. And that competition is what we need when it comes to power producers and power distributors, Mr. Speaker. So I want to urge my colleagues that as much as we are contributing to this report, it would be imperative that one of us actually comes with a bill, because we need to perhaps legislate to ensure that we have competition in that space, Mr. Speaker. With those many remarks, I would like to say that I'm still waiting on KPLC to come and conduct an audit, Mr. Speaker, on my average use. Mr. Speaker, I've written letters, I have made noise, I've knocked on doors. My bills shot up, as I said, from 5,000 to 25,000. Just on the day that I came here and got sworn in, Mr. Speaker. Those are some of the things that many Kenyans are also going through. And I would like to say that I look forward to the day that finally this industry is not going to be an industry of one monopoly, Mr. Speaker. It will be opened up, there will be competition, and the days of, just like the days of landlines, the landlines waiting 8 months to be able to get a landline on your home. And now everybody can just go and purchase a SIM card and have a phone in their homes. I'm looking forward to the day that KPLC will be a thing of the past, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Senator Chalagay Samson.